Dr. Sungmin Han walked into the Galactic Council's research library with a heavy box under his arm. He was a historian, someone who studied the past of different species. For 20 years he had worked in this building, reading ancient texts and old records. Today he came with a purpose. The Galactic Council had requested information about human history. They wanted to understand why humanity was threatening war over the Vraxian attacks. It seemed strange to them. Humans had always been peaceful. Sungmin set the box on the table in front of the council members. Inside were data chips, holographic files, and old books. Real paper books, the kind almost no one used anymore. "You asked about human history," he said. "I brought it." The council members looked at the box with curiosity. The Quellan representative Morthus floated closer. "We have read your species file. Humanity joined the galactic community in 2274. Before that, you were confined to your own solar system. A young species, relatively peaceful." "That file is incomplete," Sungmin said. He activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the table. Cities burning, soldiers fighting, weapons firing, millions of people dead. The council members recoiled. "This is the First World War," Sungmin explained. "It happened on Earth from 1914 to 1918 in our old calendar. 20 million people died. We fought with machine guns, poison gas, and artillery. We dug trenches and sent young men to die by the thousands every day." He changed the image. "This is the Second World War, 1939 to 1945. 70 million dead. We invented weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We called them atomic bombs." Another image. "The Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Middle Eastern conflicts, the African wars, the South American revolutions." The images kept coming one after another. "Centuries of violence. We fought for land, for resources, for ideas, for revenge. We fought until our planet was covered in scars." Kralth, the Vraxian ambassador, was unimpressed. "Many species have violent pasts. We all evolved through conflict. What makes humanity special?" Sungmin looked at him directly. "What makes us special is that we never stopped. For 10,000 years we perfected the art of killing each other. We wrote books about it. We built schools to teach it. We made war into a science." He pulled up another image. "A city reduced to ash. This is Shanghai, after the Third Global War in 2087. 2 billion people died in that conflict. 2 billion. It nearly ended our species." The council chamber was silent now. Even Kralth had stopped sneering. "That war taught us something," Sungmin continued. "It taught us that we were too good at killing. We had become so efficient, so deadly, that we could destroy ourselves without even trying hard. So we stopped. We unified Earth. We banned weapons of mass destruction. We chose peace. Then why threaten war now?" Morthus asked softly. "Because peace is a choice," Sungmin said, "and we can unchoose it." While the council absorbed this information, Colonel Yunji was preparing her team on Earth. She commanded a special operations unit, soldiers trained for the most dangerous missions. Her team had never seen real combat. None of them had. Humanity hadn't fought a war in over 200 years, but they had trained. Oh, how they had trained. "Listen up," Yunji told her squad. "The Vraxians have taken prisoners. 300 humans captured from a science station near their territory. Intelligence says they're being held on a prison station called Torment." She pulled up a holographic map. "The station is heavily defended. 20 warships in orbit, defense platforms, energy shields. The Vraxians think it's impregnable." One of her soldiers, a young woman named Haeon, raised her hand. "What's our mission, Colonel?" "We're going to get our people back," Yunji said simply. On the prison station Torment, the human captives were learning what Vraxian hospitality meant. They were beaten, starved, and tortured. The Vraxians broadcasted across galactic networks. They wanted humanity to see. They wanted humanity to know the price of defiance. One prisoner, a man named Dong Yun, had been a medical researcher. Now he sat in a cold cell, his body covered in bruises. The Vraxians had broken his arm and hadn't bothered to set it properly. "Why are they doing this?" another prisoner whispered. "To break us," Dong Yun answered. "To make humanity back down." "Will it work?" Dong Yun thought about Earth, about humanity's long history. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think it will." Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador Jiwan was making one final address. She stood before the assembled representatives, and this time, she wasn't asking for anything. "The Vraxian Empire has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed," she said. "They killed 40,000 refugees. They have taken prisoners and are torturing them for entertainment. We gave them warnings. We gave them chances. We gave them mercy. She paused, letting her words sink in. Our ancestors, the humans who fought those terrible wars, they learned something important. Do you know what it was? No one answered. They learned that sometimes the only way to stop evil is to defeat it completely. They learned that mercy to the cruel is cruelty to the innocent. They learned that peace without strength is just a pause before the next attack. G1 placed a data chip on the podium. This contains formal notification of military action. Earth's parliament voted unanimously this morning. We are going to war. Krauth stood up, his massive body towering over G1. You will regret this, human. The Vraxian Empire has conquered 12 species. We have fleets that darken the stars. Your tiny world thinks it can challenge us? G1 didn't flinch.
We gave you the warning our ancestors never gave each other.
That warning has expired. On Earth, in a massive underground facility, Yenwu watched as warships powered up for the first time. They had been built in secret over decades. Humanity had learned from every species in the galaxy, taking their best ideas and combining them with human innovation. The ships were beautiful and terrible, sleek hulls covered in armor, weapon systems that could tear through shields, engines that could outrun almost anything in space. And most importantly, they were crewed by humans who had studied warfare for their entire lives. An old man stood next to Hyunwoo, watching the ships. His name was Taewon, and he was over 140 years old. Medical technology kept him alive, kept him strong. He had fought in the last war on Earth, the one that killed 2 billion people. I thought I'd never see this again, Taewon said quietly. See what? Hyunwoo asked. Humanity preparing for war. The old man's eyes were sad. We're very good at it. That's the problem. We're too good. The Vraxians started this, Hyunwoo said. They did, Taewon agreed. And they think they know what war is. They think it's ships fighting ships, honor and glory, victories and defeats. He shook his head. They don't know what real war is. The kind where you use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and never ever stop until the enemy can't fight anymore. Are we going to teach them? Hyunwoo asked. Taewon looked at the warships powering up. Yes. God help us, yes we are. Captain Daehyun was no longer commanding the Horizon's Promise. That ship was being repaired. Instead, he stood on the bridge of a warship called the Reckoning. It was 3 times larger than his old vessel, covered in weapons and surrounded by a fleet of similar ships. He barely recognized his new crew. They moved with military precision. They spoke in clipped, efficient sentences. They had trained for this, waited for this, perhaps even wanted this. All ships report ready, Captain, his new tactical officer reported. Daehyun took a deep breath. For 73 years, humanity had shown the galaxy peace. Now they would show them something else. Set course for Vraxian space, he ordered, and broadcast this message on all channels. We are coming. Admiral Yuna, the supreme commander of Earth's Navy, watched the fleet depart from her command center. She was a stern woman who had spent her entire career preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now it was here. Admiral, her aide said, the Vraxians are laughing at our declaration. They say we're bluffing. Yuna allowed herself a small smile. They'll learn. They wanted to see humanity's teeth. She watched her fleet accelerate toward enemy territory. Now they'll feel them. In the prison station torment, Donghyun heard the guards talking. They were excited, laughing about something. One of them came to his cell. Your people declared war, the guard said, his voice full of amusement. The great human empire thinks it can fight us, he laughed. You'll all die, and we'll broadcast that too. Donghyun looked at the guard through his one good eye. The other was swollen shut. We gave you a chance, he said quietly. What? We warned you. We tried peace. You didn't listen. Donghyun smiled despite the pain. That was your last chance. The guard walked away, still laughing. But deep in space, Colonel Unji's team was already moving toward the prison station. And behind them, the full might of humanity's fleet was coming. The Vraxians had wanted war. Now they were about to learn what war truly meant. The Kepler station sat at the edge of human territory, a trading post where different species met to exchange goods and information. When the Vraxian fleet arrived, everyone assumed they were there to blockade it, to cut off human trade routes. They were wrong. Admiral Yuna had chosen Kepler station as humanity's first target deliberately. It was deep in neutral space, far from the Galactic Council's watching eyes. The Vraxians had positioned 60 warships there, confident in their superiority. They didn't know that 200 human ships were already on their way. Captain Daehyun sat in his command chair aboard the Reckoning, watching the tactical display. His fleet was still hours away from Kepler, but he could see everything through long-range sensors. The Vraxian ships were arranged in a standard defensive formation, big vessels in the center, smaller ones on the outside. "They're using Pattern 7, his tactical officer said. "Standard Vraxian fleet arrangement." Daehyun nodded. Humanity had studied Vraxian tactics for decades. They knew every formation, every standard response, every tactical doctrine the Empire used. The Vraxians, meanwhile, had never bothered to study humans. Why would they? Humans didn't fight. "Prepare attack plan Broken Horn," Daehyun ordered. On Earth, engineer Junho sat in the weapons development laboratory, watching the battle preparations through a live feed. He had spent 20 years designing the weapons systems now installed on human warships. They were his children in a way, and now they were going to their first real test. "The fusion torpedoes are ready," his assistant reported. "All ships are armed and standing by." Junho pulled up the specifications on his screen. The torpedoes were beautiful pieces of technology. They used controlled fusion reactions to generate massive amounts of energy, focused into a penetrating blast that could punch through almost any shield. Humanity had learned the principles from the Deltari species, then improved them by 40%. "What about the kinetic systems?" Junho asked. "Online and calibrated. The AI targeting is showing 99.7% accuracy." Junho allowed himself a small smile. Kinetic weapons were simple in concept. Throw a very heavy object very fast. But humanity had refined the idea. Their kinetic projectiles were made of dense metals, shaped for maximum penetration, and guided by artificial intelligence systems that could predict a target's movement 3 seconds in advance. The Vraxians used energy shields that were very good against energy weapons. They weren't designed for solid objects traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. "Good," Junho said. "Let's see how they perform." Pilot Seo-young strapped herself into the cockpit of her fighter craft. She commanded a squadron of 36 fighters, small craft designed to be fast and deadly. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, checking systems, warming up engines. "Dragon Squadron, sound off," she called over the communication channel. One by one, her pilots responded, all 36 ready and eager. "Remember your training," Seo-young told them. "The Vraxians fight like it's a duel. They want honor and glory. We're not here for honor. We're here to win." Her squadron had trained for this specific mission for 3 months. They had run simulations hundreds of times. They knew exactly what to do. "Launch in 5 minutes," the carrier's flight control told her. Seo-young took a deep breath and began her pre-flight meditation. Her grandmother had taught it to her, an old technique for calming the mind before battle. She would need calm. What she was about to do would require perfect timing. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. The Vraxian commander, a warrior named Thexus, saw them appear on his sensors and laughed. 200 ships against 60? He said to his officers. "The humans are overconfident. They'll learn today. Should we call for reinforcements?" one officer asked. "No," Thexus said. "We'll destroy them ourselves and add this victory to our records." He ordered his fleet into attack formation. The Vraxian ships moved ponderously, their massive hulls gleaming in the light of Kepler's sun. They advanced toward the human fleet in a steady line, weapons charging. The human fleet did something unexpected. It scattered. Thexus frowned. "What are they doing?" The 200 human ships broke into smaller groups, each group moving in a different direction. Some went up, some down, some to the sides. Within minutes, the human fleet had surrounded the Vraxian position completely. "They're trying to confuse us," Thexus said. "It won't work. All ships fire at will. Destroy any target in range." The Vraxian fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced out in every direction, trying to hit the fast-moving human ships. A few hits connected, shields flashing, but most missed entirely. Then the human ships fired back. Junho's fusion torpedoes streaked through space. Dozens of them, all aimed at the Vraxian ships with computer precision. They slammed into shields and detonated, releasing massive bursts of energy. Shields flickered and failed under the onslaught. Before the Vraxians could recover, the kinetic weapons hit. Heavy metal projectiles traveling at incredible speed punched through weakened shields and tore into ship hulls. The AI guidance systems Junho had designed worked perfectly, each projectile finding critical systems. Engine rooms, weapon batteries, command centers. 3 Vraxian ships exploded in the first 30 seconds. What are these weapons? Thexus shouted. His tactical officer was frantically trying to analyze the attack. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database. And those solid projectiles, they're moving too fast. Our shields can't deflect them. Return fire, Thexus ordered. Concentrate on one group of ships, destroy them. But the human ships wouldn't stay still. They darted and weaved, never holding position long enough for Vraxian weapons to lock on. And all the while they kept firing. Seo Young got her launch order. Dragon Squadron, go! Her fighter and 35 others screamed out of the carrier's launch bay. They were tiny compared to the massive warships around them, barely big enough for a single pilot. But they were fast, faster than anything the Vraxians had. Target is the Vraxian flagship, Seo Young called. Pattern wasp nest, just like we practiced. The fighters accelerated, dodging between larger ships, avoiding weapons fire. The Vraxian flagship was a massive vessel, 3 kilometers long, bristling with guns. It was the pride of their fleet. It was also about to have a very bad day. Dragon Squadron split into 3 groups. One group went high, one went low, and one went straight at the flagship's bow. The Vraxian gunners tried to track them but couldn't keep up with their speed and maneuverability. Now, So Young shouted. Her fighter fired a special torpedo, one designed specifically for this mission. It wasn't very powerful. It didn't need to be. It just needed to create a tiny hole in the flagship's shields. The torpedo hit, and for exactly 2 seconds, a small gap appeared in the shield. 2 seconds was all Dragon Squadron needed. The other fighters fired their entire payload through that gap. Dozens of missiles streaked through and slammed into the flagship's hull. They penetrated deep before exploding, detonating inside critical systems. The flagship's main reactor went critical. The enormous ship shuddered, lights flickering, then exploding in a massive fireball that consumed half its length. 4 minutes had passed since the battle began. The Vraxians had already lost their flagship and 12 other ships. Thexus, now commanding from a smaller vessel, stared at his tactical display in disbelief. This is impossible. How are they doing this? His tactical officer had no answer. The human ships fought like nothing he had ever seen. No honor, no grand gestures, just cold efficiency. They exploited every weakness, hit every vulnerable spot, and gave no chance to recover. All ships retreat, Thexus finally ordered. Fall back to the hyperspace point. But Captain Daehyun had anticipated that too. A group of human ships was already waiting at the hyperspace point. The Vraxian ships that tried to flee ran straight into another ambush. The battle lasted 37 minutes total. When it was over, 53 Vraxian ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 7 were allowed to escape. Their ships badly damaged, their crews traumatized. The human fleet had lost 0 ships. 3 were damaged, but all were repairable. Admiral Yuna watched the battle reports come in from her command center on Earth. She felt no joy in the victory, only a grim satisfaction. Broadcast this to the entire galaxy, she ordered. Make sure everyone sees what happened here. Her communication officer nodded and sent out the footage. Within hours, every species in the galaxy would see the Battle of Kepler Station. They would see how easily humanity had dismantled a Vraxian fleet. Admiral, her aide said quietly, the Galactic Council is requesting an immediate meeting. They want to know what we're doing. Tell them we're doing what we warned we would do, Yuna replied. We're fighting back. While the galaxy reeled from the battle, Colonel Unji and her team were approaching the prison station Torment. They had traveled in a stealth ship, hidden from sensors, moving slowly and carefully. We're in position, Unji whispered to her team. Remember, we get our people and we leave. No unnecessary killing, her soldiers nodded. They were all experts, trained in infiltration and rescue. They had rehearsed this mission 100 times. The prison station had 20 warships protecting it, but those warships were now receiving emergency messages about the disaster at Kepler Station. The Vraxian High Command met in emergency session. Around the strategic planning table sat the Empire's greatest military minds, generals and admirals who had conquered 12 species over 3 centuries. They stared at the holographic display showing the destroyed fleet at Kepler Station and could not believe what they were seeing. How? One general asked. How did the humans do this? They fight differently, another admiral said quietly. They don't follow the rules. There are no rules in war, the Supreme Commander Marshal Vorkath growled. Only victory and defeat. The humans surprised us. It won't happen again. He stood and pointed at the galactic map. We will show them the true power of the Vraxian Empire. Launch Operation Crushing Dawn. Hit every human colony within our reach. When they see their homes burning, they will beg for peace. The order went out. Vraxian fleets moved toward human space, targeting the outer colonies where families lived, where farms produced food, where children went to school. But Commander Jisoo had been waiting for exactly this move. She worked in human intelligence, a network of spies and analysts who watched everything in the galaxy. For 3 months, she had been tracking every Vraxian ship, learning their patterns, predicting their movements. They're going after the colonies, she told Admiral Yuna. 18 fleets, heading for our weakest points. When will they arrive? Yuna asked. 36 hours, that's enough time, Yuna said. She issued orders immediately. Evacuate all targeted colonies. Every civilian off-world in 30 hours. It was a massive undertaking. Transport ships rushed to the colonies, loading people, animals, anything that could be saved. The colonists didn't want to leave their homes, but they trusted their government. If Earth said evacuate, there was a good reason. Within 30 hours, every targeted colony was empty. Buildings stood vacant, farms abandoned, schools silent. When the Vraxian fleets arrived, they found nothing to destroy except buildings. They bombarded the empty colonies anyway, turning homes into rubble, erasing years of work. The footage was broadcast across the galaxy. Monsters, the other species whispered. The Vraxians are destroying civilian targets. But the Vraxian High Command was confused. Where were the human refugees? Where were the desperate pleas for mercy? Instead, they received a message from Admiral Yuna. You attacked 18 of our colonies, her message said. You destroyed homes and farms. You wanted to hurt us, to make us afraid, but you only destroyed empty buildings. She paused. Now we will respond. For every colony you attacked, we will destroy 3 military targets. Empty threats, Marshal Vorkath said. He was wrong. The human fleet had split into smaller task forces, each one targeting different parts of the Vraxian Empire. They didn't attack planets or colonies. They attacked military bases, shipyards, supply depots, everything the Vraxian military needed to function. Captain Daehyun led one task force to a major Vraxian shipyard. It was where they built their largest warships, a facility that took decades to construct. Hundreds of workers labored there and 50 warships protected it. Civilian workers? Daehyun asked his intelligence officer. Already evacuated, sir. Commander Jisoo sent them a warning 6 hours ago. The workers left. The military stayed. Good, Daehyun said. He didn't want to kill civilians. That wasn't the human way, no matter how angry they were. All ships, attack pattern Delta, destroy the shipyard. The battle was brief and brutal. The defending Vraxian ships tried to fight, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The human fleet tore through them, then turned their weapons on the shipyard itself. Fusion torpedoes and kinetic projectiles rained down on the massive facility. Construction docks exploded. Assembly buildings collapsed. The half-built warships still in their berths were destroyed before they could ever launch. In 2 hours, the entire shipyard was gone. Decades of work, centuries of knowledge reduced to floating debris. This scene repeated across Vraxian space. 54 military targets destroyed in 3 days. The Empire's military infrastructure was being systematically dismantled. Medic Donghyun had recovered from his injuries and returned to duty. But now he worked on a hospital ship treating wounded soldiers. Not human soldiers, though. Vraxian ones. After each battle, the human fleet would scan for escape pods and survivors. They would pick them up, treat their injuries, and hold them as prisoners of war. Donghyun and other medical staff worked tirelessly to save Vraxian lives. Why are you helping me? One Vraxian soldier asked him. We were enemies. You were, Donghyun agreed, wrapping a bandage around the soldier's injured arm. But the battle is over. You're not a soldier anymore. You're a patient, and I'm a doctor. I help patients. The Vraxian looked confused. We would not do this for you. I know, Donghyun said quietly. That's the difference between us. Word spread among Vraxian prisoners. The humans fought viciously in battle but treated prisoners well. They got medical care, food, clean quarters. They were even allowed to send messages home to their families. It was confusing. It went against everything the Vraxians had been told about humans. Meanwhile, Heian was doing a different kind of work. She was a war crimes investigator, documenting every Vraxian atrocity, the torture of prisoners, the deliberate targeting of civilians, the destruction of refugee ships. She compiled it all into a massive report, thousands of pages long with video evidence, testimony, and analysis. Every crime was documented with scientific precision. "What will you do with this?" someone asked her. "This is for later," Heian said. "When the war ends, there will be trials. Justice requires evidence. I'm making sure we have it." The Galactic Council called another emergency session. They were frightened now. The humans were winning too easily, destroying Vraxian military power with casual efficiency. What if humanity decided the council was next? Ambassador Jiwan attended the session, but she was different now. She wore a military uniform instead of diplomatic robes. Her voice was cold, her words precise. "The Galactic Council demands that humanity cease military operations immediately," the council chairperson said. "No," Jiwan replied simply. "You are violating galactic law."
What law?
Jiwan asked. "The law that allowed the Vraxians to kill 40,000 refugees? The law that let them torture prisoners? The law that did nothing when we warned you this would happen?" She stood and walked to the center of the chamber. "For 73 years, humanity followed your laws. We believed in the council and diplomacy and peaceful resolution. Where was the council when we needed it?" No one answered. "The Vraxians started this war," Jiwan continued. "They thought humanity was weak. They thought our peace meant we had no strength. They were wrong, and now they're learning the price of that mistake." Kralth, the Vraxian ambassador, stood up. He looked smaller now, frightened. "Please," he said. "This has gone too far. The Empire is willing to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Jiwan's voice was sharp. "You want to negotiate now? After you killed civilians? After you tortured prisoners? After you ignored every warning we gave you?" "We made mistakes," Kralth admitted. "But continuing this war will only cause more death." Jiwan was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. "You're right. This war should end, but it will end on humanity's terms, not yours." She turned to the council. "Humanity will accept the surrender of the Vraxian Empire under the following conditions: complete demilitarization, reparations to all victims, and trials for war criminals. These terms are not negotiable." "The Empire will never agree," Kralth said. "Then the war continues," Jiwan replied. "And if it continues, we will not stop with military targets. We will blockade your homeworld. We will cut off your trade. We will dismantle your empire piece by piece until you have nothing left." She paused. "Or you can surrender now and save what remains." Marshal Vorkath received the human terms and threw them across the room in rage. "Surrender? Never! The Vraxian Empire has never surrendered in its history." His aide picked up the papers carefully. "Marshal, we have lost 70% of our fleet. Our shipyards are destroyed. Our colonies are starting to rebel because we can't protect them anymore. If we continue, then we fight until the last ship," Vorkath shouted. "To what end?" the aide asked quietly. "The humans have proven they can destroy us, but they're offering terms. Harsh terms, yes, but we would survive as a species." Vorkath looked at the strategic map. Red markers showed lost ships, destroyed bases, occupied territory. The Empire was collapsing. In 3 months, humanity had accomplished what no enemy had managed in 3 centuries. "How did this happen?" he whispered. "We underestimated them," the aide said. "We thought peace meant weakness. We were wrong." Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of the reckoning, looking at the Vraxian homeworld on his display. His fleet surrounded the planet, hundreds of ships in perfect formation. Nothing could get in or out. "The blockade is complete, sir," his officer reported. Daehyun nodded. The Vraxian homeworld was cut off. No supplies, no reinforcements, no escape. They could survive on their own production for maybe 6 months. After that, they would starve. "Send this message to the surface," Daehyun ordered. "Attention, Vraxian government, you have 1 week to surrender. If you refuse, the blockade will remain in place indefinitely. The choice is yours." He looked at the planet below, home to 8 billion Vraxians, most of them civilians who had nothing to do with the war. The delegation from the Vraxian Empire arrived in a small, damaged ship. It was all they had left. Most of their fleet was destroyed, scattered, or had defected to join rebel colonies. The mighty empire that had once controlled 40 systems now barely controlled its own homeworld. Marshal Vorkath was not among them. He had chosen suicide over surrender, unable to bear the shame. The new government, formed from the few reasonable voices that remained, sent 5 diplomats to negotiate peace. They did not meet at the Galactic Council chambers. They did not meet on neutral ground. They met aboard Captain Dahyun's ship, the Reckoning, in orbit around the Vraxian homeworld. The symbolism was clear. Humanity held all the power now. Captain Dahyun watched the Vraxian diplomats board his ship. They walked slowly, their heads down, their proud armor looking worn and dented. Once they had sneered at humanity, now they could barely meet human eyes. Ambassador Jiwon waited for them in the conference room. She sat at the head of a long table, Admiral Yuna on her right, Hyunwoo on her left. The walls displayed footage from the war, the destroyed refugee ships, the burned colonies, the shattered Vraxian fleets. The lead Vraxian diplomat, a female named Thessa, approached the table. She stopped 3 meters away and then slowly, painfully knelt down. The other 4 diplomats knelt with her. The Vraxian Empire surrenders, Thessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. We accept all terms. Jiwon watched them for a long moment. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a deep weariness. Stand up, she said quietly. The Vraxians rose, confusion in their eyes. Humanity did not fight this war to humiliate you, Jiwon said. We fought to stop you. The humiliation you feel is your own doing, earned by your own choices. She gestured to chairs on the opposite side of the table. Sit, let's discuss the terms. The negotiations took 3 days. The terms were harsh but not cruel. The Vraxian military would be reduced to a defense force only, no more than 30 ships. All weapons of mass destruction would be dismantled under human supervision. The Empire would pay reparations to the families of the 40,000 refugees killed, to the colonists whose homes were destroyed, to every species they had harmed. Most importantly, there would be trials. Every Vraxian commander who ordered attacks on civilians, every officer who tortured prisoners, every soldier who committed war crimes would face justice. Hyun's carefully documented evidence would ensure that. These terms will take decades to fulfill, Thessa protested. Then you'll spend decades fulfilling them, Admiral Yuna replied. The alternative is we maintain the blockade until your civilization collapses. Choose. Thessa looked at her fellow diplomats. They all nodded. We accept. The formal surrender was signed in that conference room aboard the Reckoning. Captain Dahyun witnessed it, thinking about how the war had started. With refugees fleeing, with humans trying to help, with Vraxians deciding that mercy was weakness. It's over, Mira said beside him. This part is, Dahyun replied, but the hard part comes next. The Galactic Council called a mandatory session. Every species had to attend. They gathered in the Great Chamber, more frightened than they had ever been. Humanity had just dismantled one of the galaxy's great powers in 3 months. What did that mean for the rest of them? Admiral Yuna attended in person. She walked to the center of the chamber and the room fell silent. She carried a small holographic projector. The Vraxian Empire has surrendered, she announced. The war is over. Relief washed through the chamber. At least humanity was stopping. But before we return to normal business, Yuna continued, I want to show you something. She activated the projector. It displayed every message humanity had sent to the Council over the past year. Every warning about Vraxian aggression, every plea for intervention, every request for action. Then it showed the Council's responses, dismissals, delays, excuses. 40,000 civilians died, Yuna said quietly. They died because this Council failed. They died because you thought humanity would always choose peace no matter the cost. They died because you learned the wrong lesson from our history. She looked around the chamber. Humanity chose peace after our terrible wars because we understood the price of violence. We knew what war truly costs, but peace only works when everyone chooses it. When one side decides to use violence, the other side must be able to respond. The chamber was completely silent now. The Galactic Council tried to censure humanity for excessive force. Yuna continued. Let me be clear about what happened. The Vraxians killed civilians. We destroyed their military. The Vraxians tortured prisoners. We treated their prisoners with medical care. The Vraxians targeted colonies. We targeted military installations. We fought a war, yes, but we fought it with more restraint than they did. She placed her hands on the podium. This council failed in its duty. It failed to protect the innocent. It failed to stop aggression. It failed to listen when humanity warned you. Morthus, the Quellan representative, floated forward. What are you saying, Admiral? Are you leaving the council? No, Una said. Humanity is staying. But things are going to change. From now on, when this council fails to act against aggression, humanity will act. When civilians are threatened, humanity will respond. When justice is needed, humanity will provide it. You're making yourself the galaxy's police force? Another council member asked nervously. No, Una corrected. We're making ourselves the last resort. The option you call when diplomacy fails. Because sometimes diplomacy does fail. And when it does, someone needs to be able to stop evil from winning. She deactivated the projector. The choice is yours. Work with us to make the council effective, to create real justice to protect the innocent, or ignore us and watch us do it alone. The council vote was unanimous. They agreed to reform, to create new structures for intervention, to actually enforce their own laws. They agreed because they were afraid not to. Dr. Sungmin added a new chapter to his history of humanity. It was titled, The War That Changed Everything. In it, he wrote about how a species that loved peace had proven themselves masters of war, about how mercy when ignored could become justice, about how the galaxy learned that quiet voices can have very sharp teeth. Colonel Yunji returned to Earth with her team and the rescued prisoners. There was a ceremony, medals awarded, speeches given, but Yunji didn't feel like celebrating. She had seen what humanity could do when pushed. She had been part of it. Dongyun, his arm healed, returned to medical research. But he also began teaching at the military academy, sharing his experiences as a prisoner. Never forget what we're capable of, he told his students. And never forget why we choose not to use that capability most of the time. Pilot Seo Young and her Dragon Squadron became legends. They had destroyed the Vraxian flagship in 4 minutes, a feat that military historians would study for centuries. But Seo Young herself was quiet about it. We did what we had to do, she said simply. Engineer Junho watched his weapon systems being studied by other species. They wanted to buy them, to copy them, to understand them. He refused. These weapons exist to protect humanity, he said, not to be sold to the highest bidder. Hyunwoo was promoted to general. He became the head of strategic planning, responsible for ensuring humanity would never be caught unprepared again. In his office, he kept a small hologram of the 40,000 refugees who had died. This is why we prepare, he would tell visitors. So this never happens again. Captain Daehyun returned to commanding the Horizon's Promise, now fully repaired. He went back to his old job, escorting trade ships and helping refugees. But the galaxy treated him differently now. Other species moved aside when his ship approached. They remembered what he had done in the reckoning. One day, a young officer asked him, "Do you think we'll have to fight another war?" Daehyun looked out at the stars. "I hope not. But if we do, the galaxy will remember this one. They'll remember that humanity warned them first, that we gave them every chance to avoid it, that we showed them mercy before, and if they attack anyway," the officer asked. "Then they'll remember what happened to the Vraxians," Daehyun said quietly. Ambassador Jiwon retired from her position a year later. She had served humanity for 16 years, 3 months and 12 days. At her retirement ceremony, she gave one final speech. "I spent most of my career advocating for peace," she said. "I believed in diplomacy, in the power of words, in the possibility of understanding. I still believe in those things. But I also learned that peace requires strength, that mercy must be a choice, not a necessity, that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to stop those who would harm them." She looked at the crowd. The Vraxians called us weak. They said we had no teeth. They were wrong. We had teeth all along. We just chose not to bite. That choice, that restraint, that's what makes us strong. Not the weapons. Not the ships. The choice, she smiled. Humanity gave the galaxy a warning. We showed them mercy before. We gave them every chance. Some will remember that lesson. Some won't. But they can never say we didn't warn them. On the Vraxian homeworld, reconstruction was beginning. Human engineers helped rebuild what the war had destroyed. Human teachers helped establish new schools that taught history honestly, including the history of Vraxian crimes. Human judges oversaw the war crimes trials, ensuring justice was fair but firm. Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's promise, and watched the stars drift past. He had been a captain for 12 years now, and in all that time he had never fired a weapon in anger. That was the human way. Talk first, fight never. His communications officer, Mira, turned to him with worry in her eyes. "Captain, we're getting reports from the refugee colonies near the Vraxian border. They're asking for help." Dahyun nodded slowly. The Vraxians had been causing trouble for months now. They were a powerful species, tall and covered in thick armor-like skin. Their empire stretched across 40 systems, and they wanted more. "Always more. What kind of help?" Dahyun asked. "Evacuation, sir. The Vraxians are moving their fleets closer. The refugees are scared." Dahyun had seen this before. Big empires pushing around small colonies. It happened too often in the galaxy. But humanity always tried to help peacefully. They would send ships to evacuate civilians, file protests with the Galactic Council, and hope diplomacy would work. "Set course for the colonies," he ordered, "and send a message to Ambassador G1. She needs to know what's happening." Ambassador G1 Kim was Earth's voice in the Galactic Council. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. For 15 years she had represented humanity among the stars. She had negotiated trade deals, prevented conflicts, and earned respect through patience and wisdom. Now she stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives from 14 different species. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of energy or crystal. The diversity of the galaxy never ceased to amaze her, but today she felt no wonder. Only anger. "The Vraxian Empire must stop its aggression," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They are threatening peaceful colonies. Innocent people will die if they continue." The Vraxian ambassador, a massive creature named Krauth, laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber. "The colonies are in our expansion zone. They should leave." "Those colonies have been there for over a century," Jiwan replied. "They have every right to stay." Another council member, a floating jellyfish-like being from the Quellan species, spoke up. "Perhaps the humans could negotiate a peaceful relocation? Your species is known for such solutions." Jiwan felt frustration rise in her chest. They always expected humans to compromise, to bend, to be reasonable. 73 years humanity had been part of this council. 73 years of peaceful solutions. And now they thought humans would always choose peace, no matter the cost. "We will help evacuate if necessary," Jiwan said carefully. "But let me be clear. Humanity will not tolerate attacks on civilian populations. Not now, not ever." Krauth laughed again. "Tolerate? What will you do, human? File another protest? Send another strongly worded letter? Your species has no teeth. You are caretakers, not warriors." Jiwan met his eyes. "We are giving you a warning. Remember that we gave you this choice." The council dismissed her concerns. They had more important matters to discuss, they said. Trade agreements, resource rights, the usual business of galactic politics. Back on his ship, Dahyun received his orders. Evacuate the refugees. Avoid conflict. Standard procedure. He gathered his crew and explained the mission. "We're going in with 12 transport ships," he told them. "We load up as many people as we can and get them out safely. The Vraxians might try to scare us, but they won't actually attack. Not with the whole galaxy watching." His second officer, a young man named Hyunwoo, frowned. "And if they do attack, sir?" "Then we run," Dahyun said simply. "Our job is to save lives, not start wars." The evacuation began smoothly. The Horizon's Promise and her escort ships arrived at the first colony, a small settlement on a moon called Haven. 15,000 people lived there. Farmers, teachers, children. They had fled war in their own systems and found peace here. Now they had to run again. Dahyun watched the transports fill with families. Parents carrying children. Old people helped by younger ones. Everyone taking only what they could carry. It broke his heart, but at least they would live. Then the Vraxian fleet arrived. 3 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel right at the edge of the system. They were huge, each one twice the size of Daehyun's largest ship. Weapons bristled from their hulls. "This is Captain Daehyun of the human vessel Horizon's Promise," he broadcast. "We are conducting a peaceful evacuation. We have no hostile intent." The response was immediate. "Leave now or be destroyed." Daehyun felt sweat on his forehead. "We have civilians aboard. Give us time to complete the evacuation." "You have 1 hour. It wasn't enough time." "Not nearly enough." But Daehyun worked with what he had. "Load faster," he ordered. Double up in the cargo holds if you have to. We need everyone off this moon in 50 minutes. The crew worked like they had never worked before. The transports filled beyond capacity. Still, there were thousands waiting. 45 minutes passed. Captain, Mira said, her voice shaking. The Vraxian ships are charging weapons. We need more time, Daehyun said. He opened the channel again. Please, we still have civilians on the surface. Just 30 more minutes. The Vraxian commander's voice was cold. Your time is up. They fired on the transports. Daehyun watched in horror as 3 of his ships exploded. Unarmed vessels full of refugees, gone in an instant. The other transports scattered, their engines screaming as they ran for safety. Return fire, someone shouted. No, Daehyun commanded. Get the remaining ships out of here now. The Horizon's promise covered the retreat. Daehyun's ship took hit after hit, shields flashing, hull groaning. But they got most of the transports away. Most, but not all. When they finally jumped to safety, Daehyun sat in his command chair and counted the cost. 3 transports destroyed, 40,000 people dead. Men, women, children, gone because the Vraxians wanted to prove a point. The galaxy saw it all. It was broadcast across every system. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Ambassador Jiwon stood before them again, but this time she was different. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Humanity gave you a warning, she said. We told you we would not tolerate attacks on civilians. You ignored us. You thought we were weak. You thought our peace meant we had no strength. She placed her hands on the podium and leaned forward. For 73 years, we have been the quiet voice in this council. We have advocated for diplomacy, for peaceful solutions, for mercy. Do you know why? The council chamber was silent. Because we know what war truly is. Because we have seen what happens when mercy dies. Because we remember, Jiwon straightened up. 40,000 civilians are dead. The Vraxian Empire killed them deliberately, and now humanity will respond, Kralth sneered. With what? More protests? No, Jiwon said quietly. With action. We showed you mercy before. We gave you warnings. We gave you chances, she paused. Not this time. Back on Earth, in a secure military facility, Hyunwoo stood before a wall of screens. He was no longer just a ship officer. They had promoted him, given him access to classified files, shown him secrets. This is everything? He asked. The old general nodded. Everything. Humanity prepared for this day. We hoped it would never come, but we prepared. Hyunwoo looked at the files, warships, weapons, battle plans, an entire military force that the galaxy never knew existed. When do we begin? He asked. Ambassador Jiwon is giving them one more chance, the general said. One final warning. If they ignore it, he didn't need to finish. Hyunwoo understood. The age of human mercy was ending.